Wade, welcome back to the podcast. How great is it that our last podcast, our last episode, maybe not even before we were finished recording, it instantaneously became outdated.
Invalidated? Yeah. Yeah. That escalated quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I also got to remember, that's why I wrote this note. I have to now remind myself. I put a note that says, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a comment, leave a like, and ask a question, because I'm going to have so many people on. If you want to ask a question to them, we'll definitely get everybody back so they can answer it. We're going to have a lot of fun. And if you want me to find one of my cool friends to answer one of your questions, I got so many of them. So we're going to have a great time. I'm going to start with, like, at this point in time, and this is like, don't do what Drew Brees did. Don't make comments.
Don't step on a landmine on purpose.
Yeah. Like, if there's a learning moment for us right now, is that sometimes you got to take a step back in the battle. Like, sometimes you just got to, like, let me not throw a comment out there that's going to ruffle the feathers. And it's interesting to see that even Roger Goodell has now said that he feels as though he made a mistake with the whole concept of kneeling when Kaepernick started to do that. So,
yeah, I think that there's long been this conflation in white America between what the point of that protest was. It's been spun, particularly by the right-wing media ecosystem. It's been spun as somehow disrespectful to the military, disrespectful to the troops, when it literally has had nothing to do with that. It is a player taking a respectful knee in protest in protest of the knee that Derek Chauvin delivered to the neck of George Floyd. And
absolutely,
it's brilliant work by the right-wing media sphere to miscast that, because they are the ultimate practitioners of whataboutism.
right.
It's like, there's a problem here, but look over there, look at that. They're very skilled at it. They've been doing it for a while, and they have dedicated media channels that act as a propaganda arm for some really, really negative interests. And unfortunately, they've been successful, at least in that Trumpian MAGA base, of turning it into a black people versus the military conundrum, which it's or conflagration, which it's not. It was never about that at all. And in fact, as we were discussing, like, this was actually a member of the military suggested this form of protest to Colin Kaepernick as a more respectful way than just sitting on the bench during the national anthem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the craziest thing that you see now with a lot of that media that's out there is I'm watching a lot of people just kind of saying, oh, well, these riots are happening because of these Antifa people. They're terrorists. They're not here for social justice. They're here to cause trouble. And
that's more, it's more whataboutism.
Yeah, it's more of that whataboutism. It's like you're deflecting from what's happening and trying to say, well, it's not, there's these people, and what about these people who are coming in to do this and that, and but it is cool to see that the world is starting to stand in solidarity towards this movement. We saw, I believe, a couple European soccer teams took a knee in the opening frame for a minute. We saw the Bayern Munich from the Bundesliga. They had Black Lives Matter on their armbands, and they also wore a shirt during the warm-ups that said, Red against racism, or Reds against racism. The team is referred to sometimes as the Reds. So we have a lot of global support of this movement right now. It's not just one group of people. Oh, Monty makes another sighting.
Yeah, he's always going to get his camera time. But okay, that was that. Right? No, I think,
you realized he wasn't getting paid for that cameo. That's why he butted out.
You can't meet his quote.
Yeah.
You
We
pay
just don't
scale.
make enough on this podcast yet.
In light of your point, I think that things are very much on their head right now, where you have America traditionally, for rightly or wrongly, acting as the world's policeman,
Yeah.
now being viewed by from now being viewed externally as being the ones with the sickness, like both literally and figuratively. We are,
The
you know,
ones.
we have a pandemic raging out of control. We have inept and actively racist mismanagement from the top, and we have a full-on, you know, racial, an ongoing series of race riots that seem like they are in no way going to let up anytime soon.
Dude, I watch it.
I
I was gonna say I watched this. I'm watching this whole thing unfold, and I'm watching different people chime in from all over the country, different ethnicities chime in from all over the country, and we are on the verge of an all-out race war. It's not just gonna be blacks against whites. It's gonna be everybody, and when you see Hispanics, Asians trying to not join in, it's concerning because it's not about whether or not you like these black people. It's about making sure that no matter what the color of your skin is, no matter what your ethnicity, where you come from, we're all going to get the same level of respect and the same level of treatment. And to bring up the George Floyd situation, it's just like a lot of people are saying, well, he's a criminal. Well, it's not about the fact that he's a criminal. It's about the fact that, we expect our law enforcement to treat criminals with a certain level of decency during their arrests, whenever they're incarcerated. Like, there are certain humane standards that we need to keep. And now we're losing sight of that. We're watching a world where we're not treating people with fairness, even if they are criminals, right? There's a certain level. Like that's why they created it's the Geneva Convention for like worldwide interrogation law or something like that.
Well, yeah. Well, I also think that, this is not a novel problem. This is something that we're only really starting to get a handle on, the depth of the disparity between these interactions between police and people of different skin tones. We're only really seeing that since the advent of the camera phone, where people were able to virally transmit images of what was actually going down.
Oh my God,
because because it's prior to that point, it's a he said situation, and the guy with the badge and the gun is going to get the benefit of the doubt in that scenario.
Yeah. When you think back to how many times that something like that has happened, and we just didn't have any proof. We just had whatever that officer said. And, there's that thing of like, it's a dead body. That dead body is not going to give its side of the story.
Yeah, instances of police brutality rarely end in charges, and they almost never end in any level of conviction.
Yeah.
Even when, there's body cameras on, and there's, like, the DAs are disincentivized, and I believe I said this last time, they're disincentivized to go after the people that they need to work with in order to, pursue criminal cases.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a healthy system. And, I was listening to DeRay McKesson, who's running a great organization. They have just put up, what is it? I think they're called Count Zero or Campaign Zero. That's what it is. And they just started an initiative called 8 Can't Wait, which if you go to 8can'twait.org, it shows
8 Can't Wait.
8can'twait.org. 8, the number 8.
Okay.
And it's 8 ways that communities can instill policies and procedures to bring the presence of policing down and install more accountability into the system. Like, part of the point is we deal with so many situations in the society with armed police that don't actually, not only is an armed policeman not required for a lot of these situations? They
Mm.
often don't have the requisite training to deal with someone having, say, a mental health break or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So if you limit the amount of situations where an armed person is showing up to deal with something that's out of their experiential zone,
Yeah.
you limit the potential application of violence.
Yeah, and
And
it's such a high stress job too. Like, you got to think about it. You watch police officers, and they're constantly in this high stress situation, and they're constantly, either having a weapon pointed at them, or they're having someone yell at them, or they're, trying to breach into a violent situation. And it's a high stress job. And that's, at that time, you got to think to yourself, why am I going into this? You know what I mean? Like, you have to say to yourself before you go into a vocation that has such high stress requirements. And if you know you're the type of person who wakes up in the morning and you spilt the milk from your cereal bowl onto the floor and you're already like flipping out this morning, you might not be set up to be a police officer, but they're still accepting those guys in, right?
yeah, and I mean, I think that by and large, a lot of people get into law enforcement because they are trying to protect and serve, and that has varying degrees of how that's expressed and of what subcommunities they're really trying to protect and serve. But there are some that get into it for the wrong reasons, for the
Mm,
ability to have that gun and that badge and to exercise their power over someone else. And
yeah.
now you add in the additional complexity of the fact that we've been in an endless war for 2 decades, and we've damaged 2 generations of American soldiers abroad, and then we've brought them back in, reindoctrinated them into society, and fast-tracked them into positions in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Um, those two jobs are not the same thing, and we've seen that on the streets of DC.
Yeah.
When you are trained to neutralize an enemy, that is not the same. It's the opposite end of the spectrum of being an officer of the law that's dedicated to
I,
serve and protect the populace.
I'd love to know what the difference is between a police officer who, has served and one that hasn't. That's something that's very interesting to me in understanding the mentalities behind the two things. Because I would think if you're a police officer and you've already had prior experience in the military and you've been deployed, you'd probably been exposed to such high level stress situations that when you come back, the stresses of the day to day are not the same. But then you have other aspects of it, which is certain, former service members don't reintegrate as easily as others. So I'm just interested in it to see like what becomes of
Mm.
it, understanding it better.
Well, I don't want this to be read as an indictment of the service that our military members do for this country. I mean, I've come from a military family. I have the utmost respect for it, but there is a significant issue in my mind between introducing someone who's been in a state of constant combat in an environment where, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, these are not places where there are really any coherent rules of society that we would recognize as
Yeah.
Americans. And an attack can come from any quarter, and you often have to respond with lethal force
Yeah.
to people that you would not consider to be a legitimate target in war because, a woman in a burqa or a child, has an AK-47 or an IED strapped to them, or
Yeah.
it, and that psychological damage is cumulative. And when
Yeah.
somebody tries to come back to reintegrate to American society with laws, with like norms, or
Mhm.
in theory norms, that cumulative damage, it doesn't stay in Iraq, it doesn't stay in Afghanistan, it doesn't stay in Syria, it comes back with it. And
Yeah. I can believe
we
that.
saw members of law enforcement who were on a war footing this week,
Mhm.
and that's, I mean,
Well, you
I
were
have
down.
sympathy for.
I was going to say you were also down at the protest in here in Boston, and got
Mhm.
to peacekeep over there and try to keep. And I commend you for that. Like that's a big thing, man. Like be willing to leave home and then go down to a protest, especially knowing how crazy it's been all over the country, and to go out there and try to maintain peace between all parties. I mean, I commend you for that. That's huge. What was that like?
Well, first I want to change the framing a little bit. This was actually not a protest. It was a vigil
Mm-hmm.
being observed for victims of police brutality,
Okay.
and it was, yes, there is some overlap there with the way they're constructed, but the tone is much more one of that's so somber and sober.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there were a few people chanting. Yes, there were some, what I would term, low end incidents of low grade antagonism toward the members of law enforcement. But I would say the majority of hostility in posture, in body language, was emanating from law enforcement, and that was a very strange place for me to be, because I've organized upwards of 24 events since getting into activism.
Mm-hmm.
We've done everything from impromptu Protect Mueller rallies on a Tuesday night on the Common with 500 people, to the Women's March or March for Our Lives, where you have 50, 60,000, 100,000 people, and you have counter protesters, and you want to keep the counter protesters separate from the protesters. They can yell at each other all day long, but you want to avoid physical contact. And the people I work with have committed themselves to providing a buffer zone
Yeah.
between those two parties. Now, in the past, law enforcement has been a huge asset to that.
Mm-hmm.
They form an additional ring around counter protesters, and then we ring around them, and then that pushes things out, and it removes the likelihood of physical contact between one party and the other. This time, there was no coordination, and they were not interested in it, and they were not interested in us being there.
Yeah.
And
With the law enforcement?
There, when we showed up, there were lines of cops with wooden clubs in their hands, ready to go, and their body language was very itchy to use them.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what happened is, so there's a procession through Franklin Park, which is a pretty tight, enclosed roadway.
Mm-hmm.
There was a program that I never get to see the program for things like this, because I'm usually on the periphery of the crowd. But I believe it was Maura Healey, Charlie Baker, and Walsh, in addition to the Black Lives Matter Boston organizer, Monica Cannon Grant, who I believe pulled all this together.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting because the mood of the crowd was peaceful, somber. Like I said, low-grade antagonism here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But at around 7:15, I looked up, and there was some spontaneous applause, and then people started moving away from where the staging area was.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that the event had ended.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I had been told that it was going till 8. So I looked at my watch, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be home early today.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
Yeah. Didn't go, spoiler alert, didn't go that way.
Oh man.
So I believe that there's probably a significant overlap between when the VIPs, such as Baker and Healy, left the premises, and when the posture of law enforcement changed markedly. Because as the crowd was peacefully dispersing, there was some chanting, but by and large, people and law enforcement were maintaining a healthy level of separation.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden things changed. They started driving motorcycle cops and large swarms of bike cops in through the protesters as they were trying to leave, as they were heading to Forest Hill.
And that's only going to antagonize people.
Yeah, it's not a good strategy if you want people to peacefully disperse. And what happened was it was self-fulfilling prophecy. All of a sudden, there was a huge confrontation on a very narrow roadway, and cops were, pushing, shoving,
Yeah.
administering what I can describe as a hockey style check with a baton to
I'm not
actually
laughing
to
because
a
it's.
yeah
I'm not laughing because that's funny. I'm laughing because of the description, because it's so accurate in my head of like, oh yeah, I get that. But no,
yeah right.
it's it's one of those things that I look at and I think to myself, what's going on? Because there's a lot of videos online, and you know, you gotta sift through the videos to know what's real and what's not real. But at the same time, there's a lot of videos online right now with violence between police officers and protesters. And sometimes I think to myself, like, how the hell did we get here? How did we get here?
It
I'm
doesn't have
watching.
to happen this way.
Yeah. Well, I watched a video of like, have you ever watched? You watched Avengers Endgame, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that last scene where everybody kind of like forms together?
Hey, so you should probably throw a spoiler alert on this.
It's been out for a year. if you haven't seen it, it's your fault. All right.
I did a spoiler alert on a Sopranos episode the other day. I don't know. You can never be too careful. You never know. The internet's a crazy place. You never know when somebody's gonna freak out over something.
But yeah, and then just to see the
All right, go on.
just to see that ultimate confrontation, and to see a group of police officers yelling like war cry, running at protesters, and I'm thinking to myself, like, it doesn't need to be this way, but since it is like how do I make sense of all that?
I can tell you. All right, so it's a top-down philosophy. You're hearing terms like dominate and battle space. So peaceful protesters are being treated as enemy combatants from the White House on down. And they're setting the example for municipal police departments to act in that fashion. DeRay McKesson said the other day, he's like, I don't know how you change the culture of a place when everyone in that culture, whether it's the police department, a school, a company, whatever, if everybody in that place knows that the consequences for their actions are effectively nothing, I
Yeah.
don't know. If you know that you are going to be able to apply force at an unnecessary level and get away with it,
Oh my God.
well, you're probably going to take that. Most people are going to take that opportunity to
Not
use
even
that
just
tool.
that, dude. Imagine if someone went up to you and said, like, hey, man, every single Thursday, just you, are allowed to walk around town and slap people in the face, no repercussion. I'd slap everybody.
Yeah, I've
Like,
got a list.
exactly. There is a, maybe not everybody, like some people just for fun, but there's definitely a solid list of people that I would walk around and slap if I was told that slapping people had no repercussion. Right. And
Yeah, and here's the thing: like, they knew that their actions, by taking an aggressive posture towards a crowd that had been acting peacefully and was peacefully dispersing,
yeah,
these are professionals. They know what they're doing. They've cleared some
absolutely.
crowds before. They know what works. They know what doesn't work. And if you start moving very quickly in large numbers with bright colors on, so people know that it's a swarm of law enforcement moving,
And those
people
lights,
get
man.
tense.
And
Yeah,
those lights. Those lights are annoying.
and they were driving motorcycles through pedestrians at a very unsafe speed, and they triggered that confrontation. And I have to believe, since they know what they're doing, and as someone who has the utmost respect for law enforcement and the job that they do, and has worked with them on de-escalation on a number of occasions, they know what they're doing. They did it on purpose.
Yeah. And
And
that's something that concerns me right now, is not like you're seeing a lot of viral videos of, police scanners saying questionable things, police officers being recorded. There, I think it was North Carolina. I want to say North Carolina. One guy went up to a police officer and said, "So what are you going to do to people if they're out past curfew?" And the police officer said, "Oh, we're going to beat their ass."
mm,
Like, so you're
well,
So you're coming into it with a weird mentality of aggression, and it hasn't even happened yet. So these people are, and the more these videos get shared, the more that people are getting angry. It's crazy what we're watching. I saw a police officer when they all formed a wall. He took a knee. So the police officers were all forming a wall against the protesters, and it was a black police officer. And when he got to when he was in this position in the wall, he decided, I'm going to take a knee on this wall. And all of a sudden, like, his other police officers are like pulling him up and reprimanding him, and every single time he's like, nope, I'm taking a knee. Nope, I'm taking a knee. And I think and that knee has become like the symbolism now. The older black symbolisms for black rights was always that fist, right? You make a fist, but I think now it's take a knee. Like, we've now shifted the oh my God, this word is gonna discourse. The word was discourse. We've shifted the discourse around, what the symbol for black rights is. It's now the knee, and it's not just for black people. It's for everyone.
And it's a fundamentally less aggressive statement. It's not. It's just one that's pleading for equal and fair treatment under the same laws that should theoretically apply to everyone else.
Yeah,
it's on its face, it's a much mellower civil rights appeal, and should be much more palatable to the masses of white America than the Black Power fist, which has the connotation of aggression and violence, to begin with. As soon as you have that closed fist, I think white America screwed up here. And they turned Colin Kaepernick into a martyr. I mean, I didn't think I would be sitting here in 2020 and having Colin Kaepernick being the face of civil rights and a reality TV show destroying Western civilization. I don't know what dystopian world we're living in right now, but
dude, and that's the thing is, we watched an organization like the NFL try to suppress Colin Kaepernick. Well, tried to successfully, right? We know that this man is a very talented quarterback who probably deserves a position in the NFL. Maybe not today because the game progressed and he's been out of shape. He's not game ready. But
I still maintain that he doesn't really know how to throw guys open, but that's a different discussion. So,
but you're watching a guy who, what is he? He's for black rights. Okay, don't sign him. Don't give him the opportunity. A lot. Some people said at some of his tryouts he looked pretty good for a guy that hasn't played football in a while. And
well, he's always been a physical specimen with a cannon arm. But I think that, again, it comes back to that right-wing media sphere. They successfully set the narrative and took control of it and made their viewers, predominantly older white Americans who are tuning in to Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, Ingram, whatever her name is, I don't know, and to have the racist views that they've been sitting on validated by a face on TV.
Yeah,
they tune in there, and she's the Laura Ingraham is the one who told LeBron to shut up and dribble.
She's the woman who also got at remember when I said that there was a woman that was supporting Drew Brees?
Yeah, that sounds on brand for her.
Yeah, that's who it was. As soon as you said her name,
she's a real peach.
As soon as you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's her.
Yeah. The white nationalist power hour block on Fox News. They got a few of them on there, but
as you know, you know what the funny thing about it is like if that white nationalist power hour on Fox, if they start to support Black lives, is the world truly coming to an end, or like do we at least need?
I don't think you have to worry about that, but it's not really on brand for them.
Right, black people are out here protesting. All of a sudden, Fox is supporting them, and now we're just confused. What?
I did. I did sit through Candace Owens' 18-minute
Oh,
excoriation of
I
George
know.
Floyd, and
I have a friend who I want to talk about that, but I have a friend that I'm going to do a podcast with that about. So we can touch
okay.
up on it. We can touch on it. I don't want to go too far into it because I want to do a show with her about it. She also doesn't know that we're doing that show.
Yeah.
I've kind of just decided
I
she's
will
doing
say
it.
I will say this and leave it at this. Whether someone has committed the crime of trying to pass a fake $20 bill,
Yeah.
or whether they have, taken some illegal drugs and
Hmm.
have drugs on their person, the sentence for that in America is not death.
Yeah.
This is not the Philippines under Duterte. This is America still, and like, you've got armed protesters in bulletproof vests with AR-15s walking into the Michigan Capitol. The President of the United States is saying you should deal with them. There's very good people over there, and they're just standing up for their rights.
Yeah.
And then disproportionately see a crowd of peaceful black and brown people getting pelted with rubber bullets, pepper bombs,
Well,
tear gas.
what I will add about Candace Owens is that Candace Owens is missing out on one. Like I listened to the whole thing, and what she
A
really
soul?
well, not just a soul, but what she does is and this is one of my big problems with not just like any kind of movement, whether it's one side, left or right wing, I don't care. But what I don't like is when we just don't ask more questions, right? So she's judging based off of, oh well, this guy is, this career criminal who was trying to do this and do that, and he robbed a pregnant woman at gunpoint, and I get that he did all that. I don't think anyone's trying to dismiss all that, but we can't deny ourselves for asking the questions of how did we get here, and I think that's what she's not doing. I think she's not saying, okay, for someone like George Floyd, can we look back at George Floyd's life and say, hey, was he given the same opportunity to obtain his life the way that other people were? Was he able to, obtain things that other people were able to? Right? We remember that Charleston shooter who shot 9 people in a church. How can you explain to me how that motherfucker is not dead? Like, how did this motherfucker go into a church, a place of worship, kill 9 black people, and somehow, when he was arrested, armed, somehow managed to not get shot by police? Like, they detained him and put him in jail. Thank God he's in jail. But how did he not get? Listen, and this is why I'm not a. So that's how I feel about Candace Owens. I mean, I'm not going to take away from her ability to think whatever she wants to think. She's like a career Republican.
Well, she's also a career provocateur,
That too.
and her
Listen,
main
people say
platform.
shit just to get fucking likes.
Yeah. Well, her main platform, and she's in a very lonely arena of the political spectrum. Her main platform is to blame the black community for violence that happens against black people.
Yeah.
That you brought it on yourselves, and
Yeah.
it ignores the systemic factors that have been purposefully enacted throughout this country's
Yeah.
history that leads to that end product of violence
Yeah.
in communities.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like,
That's born out of poverty.
yeah, I say it all the time, and I say, listen, a lot, like, some of what's going on is our fault. Like, as a black person, I look at the black community, I say some of what's going on is our fault because we're not making enough changes. But it's not
Right.
that we don't want to. It's not that we don't want to. A lot of people think that, you hear people say things like, oh, well, black people are lazy. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. How comes they don't have all these things? It's not that they don't want what you want. It's that there are different hurdles that are put in their way to getting those same things. And that's the thing that Candace is not really evaluating here, is that, okay, well, what were the hurdles? Right? George, yes, he's a career criminal, but why? Like, because if George Floyd grew up in San something, one of those sand places in California where they
Diego?
have really, one of those places that have really nice houses and wives who
Mm.
use prescription pills during the daytime because they're bored as shit. That's
Mm.
probably going to get me in a
Palo
lot
Alto.
of trouble. That's going to get me in a lot of trouble for saying that. But if he was a black kid that grew up there, I bet you his life is going to be a lot different, right? So she's not taking stock of all the other aspects that come with being a black person born in poverty and some of the difficulties and hurdles that present itself to get out of that poverty and then start to create a better life, not just for yourself, but for your family, and to continue building that moving forward. And that's why I think what she says is so just naive.
It also really, really truncates the facts and ignores the purposeful nature by how these societal conditions were created for Black people post-slavery, and how, you know, in our parents' lives, and this process still informally goes on to this day, but redlining, you know, the process of just denying Black families the ability to live in neighborhoods where white people were, you know, to keep them from areas where, you know, they might have good school districts and a chance for the next generation to really achieve and then grow and then foster this healthy community.
How about
There
this
was a
one?
purposeful
Voter suppression as well.
That's the Republican Party's main tactic at this point. Their appeal to the Black community is pretty low. I don't know.
But yeah, continue what you were saying.
I don't know if you've seen some shit recently. No,
did I make you lose your track? My bad.
No. It's just that that there have been structures that have been set up in this country to keep Black people in poverty, and there's been a lot of work done legislatively, legally to restrict things like that. But the damage is still there, and it's self-perpetuating. And we need to address what the conditions are now and find a way to elevate these neighborhoods. Much like I was happy to see that Mayor Garcetti in LA pulled $150 million from the police budget and is going to repurpose that into Black and brown communities in the LA area.
Yeah. Listen, a lot of people are saying defund the police. They don't.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not saying that they don't deserve. I'm not saying that police officers don't deserve money. But if this is what they're going to do with the money that we give them, then we got to take it away. And some cops are going to suffer. But then, like, put it this way: you ever been like to practice, and then you got a teammate who's just fucking around in practice, and then coach puts you on the line and says, "All right, you guys got to do suicides until this guy finishes first," and now we're all doing suicides. And, you know, trying to make sure that this guy finishes in a respectable time. Like, this is what's happening. I think, like, it sucks that the defunding of police might happen? Yeah. That's not what we need we don't need an underfunded law enforcement. But at the same time, if this is one of the things that's going to wake people the fuck up within that organization and say, hey, you there, idiot, stop acting like an idiot because we need this funding to make sure that we can do our jobs accurately, then maybe this is a step in the right direction.
So I won't deny the need for a healthy, functional police force. I've seen some signs of abolish the police where I'm like, I'm not sure how that's going to work.
Yeah.
I didn't really think that one through. But what we need is a police department that is reflective of its intent, that isn't a pseudo military organization masquerading as a civilian police force. What we need is one whose primary mission, their primary directive, is to keep people alive, is to keep violence from happening.
Yeah.
And right now, that's very much flipped on its head, and you're seeing just uncountable tragedies on a daily basis of people that are losing their lives. I mean, there's been last I saw, there was about 1,100 arrests over the weekend.
Oh,
There's, the restaurant owner who was shot dead while trying to protect his one of his nieces or something.
yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's just been one story after another of all of these unceasing tragedies that don't have to happen if we actually have responsible commitments in our municipalities to running a police force that is responsible and accountable to its citizens, and that takes their lives as the first priority in their job.
Yeah.
If you don't want the job of putting other people first, you shouldn't be a member of law enforcement.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing this job. Like, and that's the thing. It
goes with the territory.
Because which is so interesting, because and I think about it, it's like, I look at people who have joined the military, and I think to myself, wow, this person has decided in their life that they will put their life forward to protect the life of someone else. And I'm watching these cops and I'm thinking to myself, why don't you guys have the same approach? Like, I could be all over the place and not really understand what I'm thinking here. But what's going through my head is that, you see people like these, we see people in our military, Canadian and American, and these guys are willing to go out there and die to protect people. They're not looking to go out there and kill. I have a cousin who's in the U.S. military now, and he's told me that they're not necessarily trained to kill. They're trained to diffuse situations, but they don't go into situations looking to kill, and they try not to as much as possible. Like,
yeah, well, there's rules of engagement.
Exactly.
And yeah,
exactly.
But I think if you ask any Iraqi troops from either Gulf War scenario, they would say that our military is very good at killing people, should they need to be. But the thing, I mean, it harkens back to my earlier point. Like, when you're fast tracking people into a role where the skill set of operating a firearm translates, but literally nothing else about the job translates, you are really asking for trouble. We need better accountability in how we select the people who are going to be guardians of our society. It needs to be based on better metrics than what we're using now, because unfortunately you're getting a lot of people whose first instinct seems to be, during a peaceful march against police brutality, their first instinct seems to be amping up the police brutality to about 1,000%.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Not great. Yeah.
No, listen, I've been a very big proponent of the idea that, we are at a point where all the senseless violence is not good on both sides. But if all this pain in the world is what it takes to open people's eyes, like, if everyone has to, people don't realize is the world is suffering right now. There's a global pandemic on our hands, right? I will say this again, 100,000 Americans have died this year. And this pandemic officially started in what? They say the official start date was February, was the first case in the United States?
I think it was a little before that, but it's hard to tell, because there was no competent management at the top. They nuked all the structures that would have caught on to something like this.
So even if
I know that
say January.
I know that intelligence agencies were warning this guy back in October that this is going to be a problem. But here's the problem: the president doesn't know how to read.
It's hard to be the president if you can't read.
Yeah, that's the one thing that gets me. The lack of the one thing that gets me, the lack of intellectual curiosity.
Just one?
just the thing that bothers me more than anything, and I know this is a silly hill to die on, but the lack of intellectual curiosity of Donald Trump really bothers me, because in that President's Daily Brief, you get the most fascinating stuff that I would give a limb to be able to read
Oh
about
my
what's going
God,
on in the world.
absolutely.
And he just wants a couple of quick pictures, and then he wants to go back to watching Fox News. It's
Because they love him.
maddening to me. Wouldn't you want, if you're in that position, wouldn't you want to know all the really fun stuff, like the
Absolutely.
the CIA operations, and and I mean, I just that's part of the privilege of having that stupid job is knowing all this crazy stuff that never makes it to into the lives of the average American. And that just bothers me.
Oh man.
The
And,
lack of,
yeah, that's the thing. Like since February, let's say January, February, so about 5-6 months, right? About 5 or 6 months. Or anywhere from 4 to 6 months, whatever. 100,000 Americans have died from a global pandemic. And we are, instead of like banding together, we're still fighting about other things. Now, you would think the nation would come closer together in a time like this, but no.
It's really tough when the guy at the helm of everything has made his entire political career out of being divisive. He has always, we have had some norms of respect in the political process that this guy has absolutely nuked. And he does it to us, he does it to his own people. He brands everyone who has the audacity of saying anything he doesn't agree with or that is the least bit unfavorable to him as an enemy of the state.
That's how you get fired in the Trump. That's how you get fired in the Trump administration. You say something he doesn't like, boom, you're fired.
Yeah. Lisa Murkowski had the audacity of discovering she had a little bit of a spine left and said something. It said something about the protests, and then he was like, well, I know what I'm going to be doing in 2 years. I'm going to be campaigning for whoever Lisa Murkowski's primary opponent is.
Jeez.
And I was like, no, in 2 years hopefully you're going to be in jail, bud, but
we're working on it.
Pump the brakes on this. But it's this thing where they have this culture now in right-wing politics that they have a purity test, and that is based around kowtowing and towing the line to whatever the dear leader says. Whatever crazy thing that he says, that's reality now, and we have to go along with it. And if you're not with the program 100%, then you're getting forced out, either forced out of the administration, or we're going to find some crazy person to primary you from the right. And they have very successfully winnowed the field of individuals who, A, have a spine, and B, know what they're doing. So that now our administration is just sycophants who are the D team of Republican politics, way out of their leagues in their job, in the jobs they have.
This man called them the D team. So, and I mean, that's.
Well, let's be fair. They weren't starting with the A team anyway, because all those folks knew to get out of the way of this thing. Just say, yeah, let's give it a sec before we sign on with the administration. So he fired the initial group, which was already the B team. We've been going through the C team like
clockwork,
burning through those guys, and now we're on to D.
D plus.
Some might make the argument that this is an F.
D minus team?
Yeah. D minus, still passing. I don't think these guys are passing.
Which is an interesting thing, because it kind of brings me into what I wanted to ask you, which was about, like, because you being a warrior for the Democratic Party and for Elizabeth Warren, and how much, like, I've seen you put a lot of good work into being part of that Elizabeth Warren campaign. And it's amazing because they say that it is very unlikely for a Republican to either switch to the Democratic Party or for a Republican to vote Democrat, as it's more likely for a Democrat to do the opposite. But here you are on the on the Democrat side.
Yeah, I did a little introspection about that, and may have been slightly chemically aided, so that helps. But
anything to open up your mind, man.
but I realized, so I grew up conservative, and I have had this kind of inexorable leftward march to my politics.
Yeah.
You know, ever since Donald Trump became a real, actual threat. I was largely an apolitical individual. I believe, I had the luxury of believing as a white, straight male in America that really whoever was in charge wasn't going to affect me very much.
Yeah.
And I took that for granted, and I took advantage of that, and to be largely disengaged from the political process for almost my entire adult life. I still had my beliefs, and they were definitely, growing up in a conservative Christian household, my beliefs definitely softened as I was exposed to a more multicultural society with a lot of other influences in it beyond, just Christianity and right-wing values or conservative values, I will say. And, I was evolving politically, but I really wasn't engaged until the specter of Donald Trump came on the scene. And that has pushed me inexorably to the left. But I realized that while my politics have changed significantly, there's this significant delta between my politics and my beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's not, I'm coming to find out, that's not how most people are wired. Most people, what they believe is what they express politically. And I realized that at my core, I'm actually a pretty conservative person.
Yeah.
But my conservatism, my libertarian instincts manifest in this live and let live philosophy that actually is a pretty darn liberal agenda politically.
Oh yeah.
Because
even me, man. Even me. I'm very, like, my political theories, like, they change based on situation. For example, there are certain things that I think that need to have a more conservative approach. There are things that I think need to be more social. Some things that I think that need to be more liberal. For example, one of my favorite politicians in Toronto history was Mayor Rob Ford. A lot of people don't like Rob Ford because of the, cocaine. Couple videos of him talking Jamaican patois on camera, drunk driving.
By the way, Rob Ford word association always starts with cocaine.
Yeah. But what I
just saw right there.
What I do like about him was that he was a very conservative leader. And he was conservative in the sense of he was very focused on maintaining things for Toronto people. For example, a lot of schools in Toronto in general don't have football programs. They just don't exist. That's why you don't see a lot of Canadian football players. And the local school that's near where he lives, I believe, is Don Bosco. And he privately funded the Don Bosco football team in addition to coaching the Don Bosco football team because they didn't have anyone to do it. And a lot of things like that is what he was about. And the biggest thing for me was that he wanted to expand the Toronto transit system, but keep it under the umbrella of the TTC. He wanted to make sure that the Toronto politicians that were just spending ridiculously were put in check, right? I remember a story about a few Toronto politicians who were trying to use taxpayers' money to go to Milan for a week to work on a proposal for Fashion Week in Toronto. Like, why do you need to pay taxpayers money to go to Milan for a week? Like,
I would like to point out that is a level 1 abuse in the Trump administration.
Canadians are just not doing it like they are in America, man. Listen, Canadian politicians, if you really want to be respected over on this side of the border, you can step up your corruption. They're looking at us and they're laughing. But you know, it's probably the most conservative that I've ever been in a political realm, because what he was doing, it was all about Toronto. It was all about a city that I grew up in, a city I believed in. He was encouraging people to do things that are more Toronto focused, right? But if you expand that beyond Toronto, if someone told me, you know, what do you think about Ontario? Well, I think, okay, Ontario, we need to think a little bit more, you know, liberal, because everything is focused on Toronto and the GTA, and we need to start finding ways to invest in other areas in the province so that they can have a more sustainable life. So that way people are not leaving St. Catharines, people are not leaving Owen Sound, Thunder Bay, Peterborough, all these out there places just to come to Toronto for a life, right? They should be able to find something sustainable to them out there. And I remember, this is back in the days of Dalton McGuinty, who was our premier at the time. He sparked up a $6 billion deal with Samsung, that Samsung would start doing, because they didn't want to produce they were producing in Korea. Samsung's Korean, I believe.
I believe so.
Yeah. Someone's gonna,
probably.
Yeah, I think I'm right. I could be wrong. But they didn't want to produce in Korea and then ship everything over to Canada. Yeah, look it up while I'm like talking. While I make an idiot of myself.
Do your thing.
But they didn't want to produce in Korea and ship everything over to Canada, so they wanted to open up a few factories in Canada.
You are, sir. South Korean multinational.
Ah, yes.
headquartered in Samsung Town.
Oh, wow.
Hey,
yeah,
right
there you go.
Good branding.
That's great branding. If I ever start a company, I'm also looking to change the city name. But there was a $6 billion deal that would have them open up factories all over Ontario, like not in the city, but outside the city. $6 billion, they said it was projected in the 20,000 job range, 20 to 30,000 job range. And I thought it was great. I thought, yeah, that's a liberal government at work, looking at our foreign partners, breaking down those barriers and saying, hey, we'll help you progress as a company if you help us progress as a society. And the conservative government that we had shot it down, because the conservatives don't believe in foreign investors coming into the country, right? And it's just like, you gotta. My belief politically is that you can't just think about one thing. You have to take what is best for people on a whole. And sometimes municipally, state/provincial to federal, it's all going to change. It's all going to change. And if you just stick to one thing and believe that, well, I was raised as a conservative, so I have to be conservative, that's not going to work. You got to be open to receive new information. You got to be open to so many other things. This is a really weird rant that I went on that I don't think has a point.
But you went full Canadian. You just said the American audience might want to skip through that part.
Yeah. But what I am saying to my American friends and also my Canadian friends is that we need to start thinking about political parties and leaders who are going to bring our countries together and continue to propel us forward. Not like Trump, who is like, Trump's not, it's not even a situation of holding us back. It's a situation of, you ever play street hockey growing up?
Once or twice.
Once or twice? Oh man, you need it. That's how you know you were not raised in Canada.
Just south of there.
Just south. Probably could you throw a stone and hit Canada from where you are in Maine?
No, Maine's a big place. People don't realize that. It's a pretty big state with not that many people in it. So I probably couldn't throw a stone and hit the next person.
But like Donald Trump is the equivalent of when you're playing street hockey and you score a goal on the goalie. Trump is the goalie in this reference. And the goalie, instead of continuing to play the game, takes the ball and throws it down the street. And you're just looking at him like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Or the kid,
I'm not
like,
playing by your game anymore.
Yeah, or that guy on the basketball court when he loses and he takes his ball and he goes home. That's Trump.
Yeah. Well, in a way, you are quite correct that Trump has decided that norms don't apply to him, as well as laws. Yeah, he decided that a long time before he was president. But yeah, he is not committed to working let's say his commitment to reaching across the aisle is mild at best. He wants to brand anybody who doesn't kowtow to his brand of politics as being a loser and being the enemy of the state.
Oh my God!
And that's very dangerous language to have a bully pulpit of that, and to have your own media arm that can take, someone like Adam Schiff and brand him as a boogeyman when he is a legitimate lawmaker who is one of the smartest people in politics, and you clearly can tell that he cares more than almost anybody. And he's taking someone and putting them in a position where Trump's followers, might do something violent based on the way that he has cast these people, whether it's Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren. He gets around to everybody at some point or another, and he does it to people in his own party like Mitt Romney and Murkowski and whatnot. I'm blanking on him now. The Tea Party guy who is now an independent, Justin. Anyway, it'll come back to me as soon as we're done. But
just yell it out.
But yeah, but yeah, he vilifies people, and it's one thing to have polite discourse and say, I do not agree with my distinguished colleague from Delaware that this is the right way to deal with, healthcare in this country. I don't agree. I think your point is not well taken. But it's quite another to say this person is an enemy of the state, or this media entity is an enemy of the state. And
he's going after Twitter now.
Yes. Yep. It was only a matter of time, because they've finally been pushed to the point. We talked about this last time, but they've finally been pushed to the point where they just can't allow him to spread toxic, easily disprovable lies in the middle of a global pandemic that will get people hurt or dead. They have enough civic responsibility in their corporate entity to say, yeah, we're going to have to do something about this. Right. Because he's espousing really unhealthy, unproven techniques to combat the virus that will get people hurt, and he's straight up espousing violence against protesters. And that, it's just not a healthy social media entity, of which Facebook is clearly not, will have to do this going forward, to just label things as disinfo, because it gets out into the media sphere too quick, or the social media sphere too quick. And I mean, I'll give you an example from my own life. Having a relative just forward me this completely unhinged and easily identifiable crazy forward that said it was on fake stationery with a National Guard emblem on it. And it said, Donald Trump is going to use the blah, 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 blah act to declare martial law. Forward this to everyone you know. They're just clearing the streets right now. This was 3 months ago or 2 months ago. And it was such a thing that like a quick Google search would have yielded the result that this was fake news. It was disinfo. It's pushed by foreign entities that want us to be divided, that want us to fall from our perch as the number one power in the world. And this was passed by a person from a certain generation who doesn't have the same technological cynicism that every generation that grew up with the internet has. Like, we've all developed this layer where we look at something with suspicion first, because we've been burned one too many times. And we've learned, you learn real quick that everything that's on the internet isn't true. But unfortunately, an older generation, of which comprises the majority of, say, Fox News viewers and Republican voters in Florida in particular,
it's a whole demographic just thrown under the bus.
Well, I'm sorry, they haven't developed that actually self-protective cynicism, which allows you to have discernment when it comes to you are used to, when you see something on a piece of paper, when you're from that generation, you're used to that being the truth. Whether it was in a newspaper or it was a letter somebody wrote you, whatever, hey, something's down on a piece of paper. Oh, that's
for
true.
real.
So, and I react to that. But you don't think, okay, maybe before I react, I should double source this. And maybe I should make sure that those sources are ones with journalistic integrity.
Right. Not WorldStar, because I love that place.
Right.
I love WorldStar, man. I love it. I know it's a terrible media outlet for news, but I love it because of the fact that it's so unfiltered that you can legitimately see anything. It's a terrible outlet for any kind of news, or information, but because it's so raw, it's just.
As someone who's done nightclub security, I do have the utmost appreciation for watching some punk patron getting absolutely laid out by a nightclub. I would never do it personally, but boy, have I wanted to about 1,000 times. So
you and every other nightclub security guard.
Yeah.
Listen, man, I get that. I get it. I get it. It's a world that this man he's somehow
it's all altered reality.
Yeah, it doesn't seem real. It does not. So my question for you is, and we kind of shift forward here, is I already know why, but I want you to explain to the people why, because they've already seen the EW shirt. Talk about your support for Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Or what brought you there, at least? Yeah, what brought you to Senator Elizabeth Warren?
So actually, in light of the conversation we just had about my conservative views that still linger to this day, but are expressed as liberalism, I got involved very early in the Trump administration doing a lot of anti-Trump resistance activities, and that brought me into contact with people who had much different ideological foundations than I even knew existed, growing up in a small kind of insular town in coastal Maine. So as you start to see the people behind the politics, when you start to see them as real people, they become identifiable, and you learn, oh, okay, there's room for discussion here, that maybe everything I was told isn't necessarily the best way forward or necessarily the truth of the matter. All right, well, let's have discourse. So I was still nominally a Republican. I was working on behalf of Evan McMullen's third party candidacy in 2016. I still maintain that he was the most qualified candidate in that race. It's an assessment I will take to my grave. But unfortunately, we wound up with Donald Trump. And as I continued on trying to resist against Trump, I started to get involved with local organizations that had a much more left of center politics. And Elizabeth Warren was in my neighborhood one day at a pub around the corner, stumping for the mayor of Somerville, Joe Curtatone. And I was like, all right, one of my friends suggested I go down there and check her out. I was like, I don't really know too much about her, but all right, I'll give it a shot. And the place was packed. And, she was radiating this electric, positive energy that I've not really ever seen come off a human being before. she was just incredibly invested in everything that was going on, and just having this posture where just like she was the ultimate cheerleader for, and mind you, this is a powerful US senator, a
Yeah.
rumored presidential candidate at that time, you know, who is fully invested in the re-election of a small town mayor in Somerville, Massachusetts, who doesn't need any help to keep his seat. He was going to win anyway.
Yeah.
This is one any normal human being would have mailed it. And she was so invested, so electric. And I was like, I need to know more about this person.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to look her up, and, you know, nevertheless, she persisted. Clips became, something that I had never seen before, you know, as someone who was adjacent to that right-wing media sphere, not an active participant, but that was where tangentially I was getting a lot of my news, and it was forming my opinions. And one of the things about the right-wing media sphere is that they really hate strong women that stand up to their bullshit. Mm-hmm. And she is one of those women. And I realized, I was like, wow, I've secretly kind of hated her for a while, and I had no idea why. And I was like, oh, it's because I've been in a room where Fox News was on, and it just osmosized through my brain that I was like, ooh, Nancy Pelosi bad, Elizabeth Warren bad, you know.
Yeah.
And
you hear Fox News talk terrible about these people for so long, you kind of start believing what Fox News is like. Even if you don't, even if you know that Fox News spreads lies, if you're in a room long enough listening to those lies start to become reality, and you don't even realize that you're starting to feed into it until you got to catch yourself. Yep. Right? Listen, we need more of these strong-minded and strong-willed, ladies who are going to step up against Fox News, and because apparently they don't like
against bullshit in general.
Right? Yeah. They don't like you. You're their biggest adversary right now. Go get them. God.
But so I had been really subtly conditioned to view her, to think of her as shrill and being an evil shrew. Uh-huh. And then I saw her and I was like, that wasn't what I thought I was getting out of this. And she was, like I said, just relentlessly positive, energetic. She had energy, she had capability, she had strength, and she had all these things in like the right tension. And not to mention empathy, because that's sorely missing from our Republican leadership.
Absolutely.
So I had the very great pleasure of interning for her Senate campaign. I was trying to I'd finished my degree. I had wanted to segue out of the restaurant industry, and I took a step back to take a step forward and worked on her re-election campaign here in Massachusetts.
But you did a lot of work for a lot. I saw you do a lot of work. Your friend is doing a lot of work when you're like, hey man, you want to hang out? And he's like, nah, man, I can't. When you got to turn down friends, that's how you know you're putting some serious work in.
Well, yeah, I was juggling things for,
a lot of things.
Yeah, between work and interning and whatnot. But I had a really, really amazing experience there and met a lot.
But you met some interesting people too.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And I got to meet her, and I got to tell you, she was.
How small is she? She looks small.
She's like 5'10", and she's a big presence too.
Oh, really?
She came into this big room. The first time I actually met her, she came into this big office space we had out in Dorchester, where the campaign was conducting its operations. And, my back was to the door, and she just came in, and she was literally like 100 feet away from me. And it was like, you just knew, like the electricity, just like the hairs on your arm perked up, and the voice came in, and you're like, holy shit, she's here.
So that,
and she,
go ahead. Finish your story, and then I'll bring up what I was going to bring up.
She had seen me maybe one other time working with her deputy press secretary at an event, at a campaign event. She walked right across the room, like keyed right in on me, came for the handshake and the hug, and was just like, "I'm so glad to see you again." And it was like, I'm literally nothing in this whole operation, and you took the time out to just make me feel completely validated at this point. And she was electric is the only word I can really describe how she is in person. She's just 100% locked in every time. You never feel like you have anything other than her undivided attention and energy.
Listen, my thing was my when it came down to the primaries, I was really hoping that the primaries came down to her, Joe Biden, and Tom Steyer. Not because I think Tom Steyer is listen, not because I think Tom Steyer is going to make a bad president. I'm just astonished by this man's ability to always know where the camera is. Like his camera turn.
Yeah.
It's
his blue steel.
Listen, I would have sat through so many more debates of Tom Steyer just to see him like pull that off over and over again. Oh man, because the greatest was the one where we watch and he's like, I'm
waiting for it. He knew what he was doing, 100%. And yeah.
That's why I'm such a fan of him. I'm such a big fan of him for that one thing. Don't think he should be president, but I was such a big fan of seeing him in the primaries just because I love that.
Our Democratic debate drinking games were the stuff
dangerous,
of legend. So
dangerous. Listen,
yeah.
if you're ever looking to do it, and Klobuchar's running, please, as two people
back off the snark category.
Yeah, please. If you want to drink every single time Amy Klobuchar says something snarky, is a very dangerous game to play.
That, and if you combine it with every time she says something she thinks is funny,
nobody else laughs at. Nobody else. But yeah, what I was gonna say is so when you were interning with Senator Warren, that was when they thought you were like a Republican operative too, right?
Yeah.
You got to tell this story. Funny. You got to tell this. If you want to, you could tell it, but it is hilarious.
I will say, so the night of the election, and obviously we lost some seats in the Senate, but overall taking back the House was a monumental achievement, and we helped elevate people, candidates across the spectrum that did very well based on their own efforts, but also the fact that Elizabeth Warren put her name on them. Mm-hmm. So we were a big part of, she was a big part of what went down that night that has saved us from this being a complete disaster right now, because thank God there's at least one branch of government that's governed by sane people. Mm-hmm. But the long and the short of it was we all were taken out for drinks after the election, which was a really, really, really cool, emotionally charged moment. And because she had obviously a big win over Jeff Deal. And several high-ranking members of her reelection campaign revealed to me over the course of the evening, as the drinks started flowing a little bit more, that they initially thought that I was a Republican plant. They're like, I gotta tell you, when you first walked in, I thought you were a Republican spy. I was really wrong. I racially profiled you, and that was wrong.
That's hilarious.
It was one of those moments where you're like, wow, I have chosen one of the few avenues in American society where a white straight male is actually going to be profiled and unconsciously judged.
Happens. Listen, so the important thing is yeah, it happens, but it takes a big person to realize that they did something wrong and come up to you and say that you did something wrong. and ended up
I think it
being
was funny to everybody in the equation.
a great asset for the party. And I think
Well, it actually worked out great because I was able to go do some tracking, which is going to opposition campaign events and trying to get them on video saying something stupid or racist. You never can tell with Republicans these days. But
sometimes it's both.
yeah, usually.
What was it?
But
Didn't Donald Trump hit a crazy trifecta in a comment one time where it was just like, how does this even, like, not only did you've somehow found a way to make your
one time?
Yeah.
What do you mean one time?
But he said something
like Tuesday.
It's like he said something that was completely wrong, that was like backtracking on something that he had said previously that was still wrong. And just somehow,
he finds a way to amplify the wrong.
I wish I knew what it was.
Efficient way
hilarious. Oh man, that's amazing. You find yourself in so many positions in the world where you think one thing, and then your mind gets open to something else, and you get to experience something else, and through experiencing it can make you a better person. Not to say that you were a bad person, but
I've had my moments.
But it's the same concept of, if you're able to open up your mind, and once you open up your mind, you'll be able to receive information. And once you're able to receive information, you can, share it with the world, and kind of like what we're trying to accomplish with this podcast. And hopefully by doing it, make the world a better place through understanding, or at least being able to tell your story, whether it's right or wrong. But if people can understand you, ask questions. And that's what you did. You asked yourself the questions of, do my own personal views line up with what I have been told to believe politically? And, you found a way to make that work for you.
Well, what I want to say is, like, my core beliefs really haven't changed that much.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the hard part to wrap my head around, that I've been going through over the past couple of days, and realizing that while I'm a Warren Democrat for life now, that's a hill I'm willing to die on. I internally still have a lot of conservative beliefs. Like, I'm pro-life, but I'm not going to adjudicate that for someone else.
Yeah.
I love guns, but I am in favor of common sense gun laws because I really hate school shootings.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So for me, because as I was explaining before, with the delta between my belief system and my actual politics, it's that I believe a certain way, but the way my conservatism is expressed is, I don't believe I should be able to set the belief structure for the person to my left or the person to my right. I think that the important thing for me is to stand for people's right to be whoever the fuck they want to be. Sorry for the F-bomb. But I really just, as I was telling you the other day, like, I really just do most of what I do in life to get the world to leave me the hell alone. And I really just want everyone to have that capacity.
Yeah.
I think, should they choose to exercise it?
Well, and that's the thing. I think there are some people that are radicalized on both sides of the spectrum, who believe that, conservatives are evil, or Republicans are stupid, or liberals are stupid, or whatever, or sensitive. And I think that, you can have your own household the way that you want it to be. Like, you want to live in a conservative household, then that's your choice. But what you should be teaching if you want to teach your kids, the Bible this, and, pro-life or whatever, that's one thing. But you have to also let them know that this is also, you don't get to decide for other people. You get to decide for yourself. You 100% get to decide for yourself how you want to govern yourself. But that's
100%.
Yeah.
That's 100% my philosophy, and I feel less lonely today hearing you say that. So thank you.
Like, if you know what I mean, like, listen, I'm a Catholic. I'm a practicing Catholic to an extent. I try to make it to the big ones. I make it to the big ones. Easter, I try to make it. Easter Mass was canceled this year. Christmas, I'd be out there. But definitely it definitely hurts when you always hear people who are from other aspects of life trashing the Catholic religion, because the Catholic religion isn't without its own fault. But that's my decision, right? And I'm not going to walk around looking at people and saying, hey, you're not Catholic, so you're a terrible person. You need to become Catholic right now. No. And I'm not going to project my Catholic upbringing onto someone else. Now, if I were to, have children, I would definitely want to raise them the same way that I was raised within the church. But at the end of the day, it's their choice. It's their choice. It's your choice how you want to live your life. And it's, as long as you're not taking how you want to live your life and projecting it onto other people. And, as long as you can do whatever you want over there, as long as you're not causing harm to the people that are over here or spreading hate over there, right? Like, yes, you can do whatever you want over there, but if you're over there, like, trying to form a Klan rally, I'm gonna have to come in and tell you to break this up right now. Y'all gotta break this up. and that's the thing that we forget when it comes to left versus right politics. When it comes to people, it's no one's saying that you can't be who you want to be. No one's saying that you can't be who you are. But, you got to remember that we are all in this world together. And we got to find a way to live in this world together. Because if we can't, might as well burn the whole thing down today.
Don't give them any ideas. We're perilously close to that as it stands right this instant. I'm afraid based on what happened last time, I'm afraid that we're going to turn off this podcast and the ICBMs are going to be inbound. So,
dude, I'm afraid I'm going to wake up one morning and there's going to be no more America. We're getting
it's terrifying.
People, you need if you are from the United States and you are listening to this podcast, I am not one to tell you how to live your life, but you need to get this man out of the president's office. You need to 100% do that, because he has not brought us success.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, it's the problem of the not respecting norms. This is why why you can't put an outsider in that role who hasn't done politics, who hasn't learned how there's certain ways to act, and who busts norms and has dealt with everything in their career by just suing anyone that
and how
objected to what they were doing.
He throws crazy answers at everything. Like, what pissed me off so much was,
well, he's senile, Rashad. He's senile.
You remember his campaign where he's like, black people, what do you have to lose? Your community suck. You're uneducated. You don't have any good jobs, and you just came out of a Democratic president. What do you have to lose? Apparently, the answer was more. The answer, was more.
Your lives.
It was lives. It was.
Notice how every time he says, "What do you have to lose?" the automatic answer is your lives.
Your lives.
Hydroxychloroquine. What do you have to lose? Your lives. Yes, that's yes. That's what happens when you install a senile, old, racist white man who doesn't understand shit on a fundamental molecular level in the most powerful position with a bully pulpit in the world.
When I think about Donald Trump, I think about those textbook teenage girls from those movies who kind of like Mean Girls. Like, I feel like Donald Trump would make a great Mean Girl.
Yeah, he's gonna need a better wig though.
Like a young Donald Trump. Even now, it doesn't matter. But I can't, and we sit back and we have a president that doesn't argue with facts. He argues with random things that come to the top of his head. Like, he has not been taking hydrochloroquine or that crazy
hydroxychloroquine, I believe.
hydroxychloroquine. Yeah. He's not been taking. He's like, oh, I've been taking that regularly. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. You have not.
Oh, I don't doubt for a second this idiot is.
Oh, you think he is?
I know. I think he believes he knows more than any of the experts. He has said as much.
But he's not.
I think it's disturbing.
Reminds me of that
because
sorry, I was going to say,
to your point. Go on.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag in between like our being able to hear each other. So it's like I'm talking, it's weird. But what I was going to say, it's like, it reminds me of that hockey interview where this hockey player is like looking at the reporter and he's like, "Are you an expert? No, are you an expert? Are you an expert? No, you're not an expert. So shut up." That's what I want to do to this man. Like, are you an expert? Oh, you're not? All right, shut up then. Real people need to talk right now.
He has all the best words.
Oh my God. Like, and this is the man that we entrust with our lives. All because some of you just didn't want to vote for Hillary. I'm not saying Hillary would have been better. You know?
I think that's pretty indisputable at this point. I wasn't a fan, and I actively worked against her as part of a third-party bid. But I do believe we'd be in a damn sight better spot if she were president.
Yeah, I'm not listening. Well, I don't want to say that she's going to be, because I don't want to go out there and just proclaim stuff. But I will say this, Hillary wouldn't do some of the things that he's doing. She's
really any of them. Like, there is just the Venn diagram of things Donald Trump does and things Hillary Clinton does.
It's not even close. No, it's not even close. You got to keep one hand over here, one hand over here. The only things that Hillary and Donald do are basic human functions, which sometimes I question if he does those.
That and fundraisers.
Yeah. They both do fundraisers. And who knows where the money for?
Some might make the argument that both are good at corruption. I'm not lobbing that out there. There's no proof of that on one side. But in the current administration, there's a whole lot of proof of this.
I would take me some Hillary in a second. I would take 4 more years of Hillary in a second.
What's a real shame is that, based on obviously some tragedies in his personal life, that Joe Biden didn't run in 2016.
Yeah,
because I do believe that he would be our president and would be shepherding us through this very difficult time right now.
Yeah.
And we need to fix that mistake.
He said he wasn't ready. He said he's not in a place in his life where he can run for president. When they asked him if he was going to, when they asked him if he was ready, if he was going to run for the primary for the Democratic Party. So,
look, I still believe Elizabeth Warren was the most qualified candidate in this race, and I'm going to believe that for the rest of my life. And I hope she is his VP choice and the choice to succeed him for the next Democratic administration after this one.
Yeah.
Because we're going to need qualified people that know what the hell they're doing to dig America.
I love how you just said the next Democratic administration after this one. You're not even giving the Republicans a chance here.
No. I am trying to be optimistic, but these guys are going to do everything, as we spoke about. Voter suppression, redistricting, whatever. They are going to do everything in their power to make this as ugly as possible for people to vote and exercise their constitutional right. But there's more of us than there are of them.
Absolutely.
If we turn out, if we show out, we'll win this.
Listen, the world's ready to move forward, man. The world has, like, not just America, but the world has spoken. They're tired, they're exhausted, and they don't want life to be the way that it is right now. They don't want
governance by tweet.
Yeah, they don't want this. America doesn't want this. If you're an American And you know, I say this as a non-American, but if you're American and you want to reelect this guy into you know, the presidency, then in my opinion, as a non-American, you don't love this country.
Well, at that point, no. Yeah, at that point, we know that you're okay with the racism and the babies in cages. Okay, if that's what your platform is, then at least we know. But it doesn't really intersect over here with the rest of us in polite society. So it's unfortunate. I mean, the evangelical community has rallied around this guy. They have betrayed their principles.
We should separate the country. Put the liberals on the East Coast, put the Republicans on the West Coast, but we keep California.
Well, what about, you're kind of screwing Oregon in this situation too.
Fuck Oregon. What they do for me recently? Give me Nike
and Washington. Come on, there's a lot of
hate Washington. Too many hills, man. You just there's no reason to have that many hills. Tired of walking uphill. No, Seattle's a cool spot. It's a beautiful place. Like I said, just nobody wants to wake up in the morning and have to go grab a coffee, but walk uphill.
I think you're just bitter about that MLS championship.
I am. I am. Seattle's a rival, man. Hate that place. But not really. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful state. Weird weather. It was like, it never rained, but it was always misty. Like, there's always some like moisture in the air. It was very frustrating because you wanted to bring an umbrella, but you didn't need it.
I bet there's a certain magic to that in small doses, but if you live there, that probably gets old.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Dude, we've been going for about an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, we had so much more to touch on, but I get you.
Dude, the podcast isn't going anywhere. It is not going anywhere.
I guarantee I'm going to have plenty of stuff to bitch about in a week, so we can revisit it all then. So,
well, we have let's see, we're in June, so we have NBA coming back in mid-July, July 25th. I don't know when the NFL's coming back yet.
Who knows? I don't know. I really have spent very little time on ESPN.com since Tom Brady became a Buccaneer and my world exploded. It's not a great time for me.
Oh man, we need to talk about that. We really.
That's how screwed up I am by all of this winning that's happened for the last 2 decades. I'm like, I didn't get my way once. Fuck sports. At least I acknowledge it.
Listen, I'm equally as upset about it. I was talking to my boy Tito, and Tito was like, "I hope all these Patriots fans," because he's my friend that's from Jersey, and he's a Giants fan, and he's been hearing it from Pats fans for a while. He's like, "Man, I hope these Pats fans, I hope they just all keep it going, because if every single Pats fan that I know all of a sudden decides to not be a Pats fan anymore, he's gonna talk shit."
Okay. So I'd like to point out, I don't talk shit to Giants fans because at the end of the day, they were having the best day of their lives on 2 of the worst days of my life. So it's kind of really not advantageous there. And like Kevin, my really good friend, who we both know, he is a Giants fan, and we get along just fine, but we don't get too deep into the nuts and bolts of football validity or whether Eli Manning sucks or not. But
the answer is he sucks. The answer is he sucks. I'll say it for you. Absolutely. I gotta remember, because I keep on not doing this. I have to remind people to subscribe. Please subscribe.
Subscribe,
leave a comment.
Yep. There you go.
Tell people to subscribe. Share the video. What else can people do with this? Just overall enjoy it, because we have fun times over here. We're
trying. We're getting through it.
And we're trying to monetize here. We're trying to make money now. We're trying to get sponsored.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get endorsed by crazy companies that have no business endorsing me.
Honestly, I'm just happy to be able to hang out with you,
Oh
at least
yeah,
in this
absolutely.
fashion. It's been a quarter of the year since we've seen each other in real life, and
Oh
that's really crazy.
yeah, because the last time we saw each other was at that Burt Kreischer um, show, and after that we didn't see each
Hey,
other.
at least we went out with a bang, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a great fucking
yeah,
show. Because
yeah.
we hung out.
It
It
was
was
funny.
Super Bowl. We did Super Bowl. After Super Bowl, we watched a couple of basketball games together,
Yep.
and then it was nothing. And then it was Burt Kreischer, and then it
Yep.
was just like over.
Didn't get you over for the XFL, unfortunately. Before that went
No,
went
because
away,
we were
but
supposed to go to that. Remember, we were supposed to go to that training, that hand combat training, and then I couldn't make it that one time. And then when we tried to reschedule, everything got shut down. And
yeah, the world ended. Yep. Yeah,
yeah,
it kind of got in the way.
we still
Yeah.
got to do that. We still got to do that when
Absolutely.
when people are allowed to come into contact with people again.
In about a year. All right.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
this
look,
is
I love
this
you,
is a
buddy,
good.
and it was good talking to you.
Absolutely, it
All
was
right,
a
man.
long one. All right, let me